Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
Very glad you're with us for the Wednesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Classifications are very, very complicated for today's martinis, but they are mainly related to Super Tuesday and the 2024 campaign overall. So, Jim, not a lot of surprises on Tuesday night. There were big wins by Donald Trump in virtually every state except Vermont, which Haley won. Nikki Haley dropping out this morning after winning just Vermont and D.C., and the delegate count is insurmountable. She did not endorse Donald Trump. She said she wished him well and said that he had to earn the votes of her supporters. Joe Biden also had a very good night, to no surprise. He's basically got token opposition everywhere. But, Jim, one of those tokens actually got a win. And where was that? In American Samoa. Jason Palmer. Jason Palmer is the winner of the American Samoa primary with a whopping 51 votes to Joe Biden's 40. That is the theme music from 24, because as Jim and I will state, the last time we had a President Palmer, he was a very steady hand. However, if there ever is a President Palmer, there will be a lot of bad stuff that we need to thwart. But Jim, what do you make of the expected and the unexpected last night?
Well, first of all, for those thinking, aren't Jim and Greg kind of stretching this? Somewhere, some newspaper is running the headline, Palmer wins Democratic caucus, presidential caucus. So, that was my first thought when I heard that. Look, he was a Democrat, but I would vote for him because, if he was president, we'd be in good hands. In fact, all states would be in good hands. Probably a terrible ending to that presidency, but nonetheless, we'll get it. By the way, I also had to double check. I first thought it was Jesse Palmer, the New York Giants backup quarterback and bachelor and all that stuff. No, this is just some guy who apparently had never been to American Samoa. I believe this is where the Girl Scout cookies come from. And he just decided, I'm gonna run for president. I'm gonna really put my effort into American Samoa. And he won with 51 votes. According to the AP article, he's 52. So when you have fewer votes than your age and you still win, that is a sign that turnout is pretty darn low. But hey, you know what? He gets 3 delegates to the convention and he gets to walk around and say, hey, I beat Joe Biden at something. Is this going to have any real dramatic impact on the Democratic primary? No, but I'm just going to make an observation that you can kind of scoff, who cares about the U.S. territories? Look, when there was a really long, hard-fought one, Hillary versus Obama the first time around, Hillary versus Bernie Sanders, even in 2016, people paid attention to it because every delegate counted. This is not that kind of a cycle, but I just feel like the Obama campaign of 08 or 12 would not have gotten caught flat-foot and just overtaken by some, as I said on Twitter today, Irving Schmidlap, one of our all-time favorite listeners, is better known than Jason Palmer. Nonetheless, congratulations, Jason Palmer. I'm sure his 3 delegates are going to have a great time in Chicago, but that's where that shakes out. Disappointed. Look, pretty much since last fall, it's been very clear Donald Trump was at minimum extraordinarily likely to be the Republican nominee. I voted for Nikki Haley yesterday. I didn't expect her to take on. On Friday, she did not sound like she was on the verge of dropping out. I think you look at the numbers yesterday. Vermont's a nice win to have, better to win than to not win. A couple other states, Utah, Colorado, you could argue she did okay, but she just got throttled in Texas and Tennessee and all the deep southern states. So it's not exactly a shock. I think what's kind of sticking in my craw is that, so you look at the states that I think there's 20-some states that haven't voted yet, 4 territories, and the nomination's done. And we have this process that effectively begins almost immediately after the midterm elections and carries on for a really better part of 2 years. And it's over before half the country gets to vote. And so if you're a Republican in Florida or Georgia, or pretty much all the swing states, Arizona, none of them get a chance to vote. It's effectively done. And so I kind of feel like there's some, I enjoyed my stay in Iowa earlier this year, but once again, Iowa had an enormous impact on this process that, the lack of support for DeSantis in Iowa convinced him to drop out fairly quickly. And then it was just Trump and Nikki Haley. And now after Super Tuesday, so half the Republicans are this has been this enormous question before the party, and it's effectively resolved before I get any say. So I still am irritated with the state of the way the primary is arranged. In today's Jolt, I griped a bit about the 1% candidates. Look, we are back to, it is a rerun. It is going to be Trump versus Biden. We'll see who No Labels puts up, but I don't think they're going to be an enormous factor. RFK is in there. Cornel West is in there. Look, mark it. It is March 6th, and for all intents and purposes, the general election has begun.
I was wondering whether to vote yesterday. I did. The line was short. The guy I voted for didn't win. It's my only chance probably to vote for Ron DeSantis, so what the heck? It was going to be a blowout in Virginia anyway. So
he
there
had
you go.
Tough odds. He was very. He would have to come back into the race and then accumulate more votes, and that's always a tougher challenge.
Yeah, no, I didn't expect him to win, but I voted for the guy who wanted to win. Anyway, the other thing that we saw last night as the results rolled in was this comment on, I almost said The View, because it's really not that much different, the MSNBC
Freudian slip, yes.
results desk with Jen Psaki, Joy Reid, and Nicole Wallace. Oh, and Rachel Maddow. So, what's the difference? And so Psaki was talking about exit polls in Virginia, and she was shocked by the biggest issue for Republican voters.
I mean, if you look at some of these exit polls, I live in Virginia. Immigration was the number one issue.
Yes.
I mean, again, these could change in Virginia.
Well, Virginia does have a border with West Virginia. It's a very contested area.
Build a wall. Like, what?
Jim, lots of giggles about the state of immigration and how much people are concerned about it. Psaki just said she lived in Virginia. We just had a guy illegally in the country arrested for a heinous sexual assault in Northern Virginia. Apparently, she's not caught up on that or just doesn't care. The idea that this issue doesn't matter unless you live near the border shows just how far behind the American public they are.
Greg, I will see your MSNBC giggle and raise you a Mickey Mouse. So I'm surprised that she's surprised. I guess I shouldn't be surprised that Rachel Maddow is surprised. In almost every exit poll of almost every state so far, if immigration hasn't been the top issue, it's been like number 2 and not too far behind the economy. And I'd be shocked if that was not the 2 most dominant issues on the minds of Americans from now to Election Day. And just in that commentary, this indication that, well, if you're concerned about immigration, then you must be like that character from The Simpsons, Cletus the slack-jawed yokel, that you have to be some outhouse-using, straw hat-wearing backwater hick who only those kinds of people could possibly worry about that. I realize Rachel Maddow is just a commentator on MSNBC. It is not an official representative of the Democratic Party. But once again, I say, Democrats, please adopt this as your mantra. Please adopt this attitude. Please run coast to coast on the idea that anybody worried about immigration must be some redneck who just is xenophobic and hates everyone. It couldn't possibly be legitimate concerns that we've had as I keep putting it, a de facto open borders policy for the last 3 years. It's not that the borders are actually open, but you get across, you claim asylum. It's such an enormous backlog. I think it's like tripled under Biden that people are getting court dates for 2035. And people are like, okay, you can stay in the country till then. Well, at that point, you're in America and you'll worry about 2035 a decade from now. Why wouldn't people be worried about this? So I'm not shocked. On the other hand, there are times where certain Democratic commentators need to go through the motions of at least appearing concerned about illegal immigration and an insecure border. And I just love it when the mask slips and they clearly don't care. Not only do they not care, they think you have to be a bad and evil person if you dare care about this issue.
Yeah, well said. Just to follow up real quick on what you were saying, Jim, about the process and people not getting a chance in many states to have a say before it's all pretty much wrapped up. How would you do it differently? Would you just have a few different states lead off? Would you have more states early on in the process with big primary days like Super Tuesday so more people get a buy-in? What's the best way?
Okay, so I think back after like 2012 or so, I had put forth my ideal primary calendar. And a lot of it was starting with the smallest states with the fewest delegates at stake. So that, and ending with the biggest and most consequential states, the Californias, the Texas, the New York, the Florida. And the idea being that you could lose those first few ones. And every cycle, there's somebody who tries to do retail campaigning. And I keep emphasizing you can't really shake enough hands in Iowa and New Hampshire to win the nomination. But at least theoretically, you'd begin with these smaller states. By the way, coincidentally, it would begin in winter with Hawaii. and I would need to go cover that in person. But other than that, it's only self-interested, And the interesting thing is it wouldn't have ended up with a dramatically different. New Hampshire would still go very early in this process. Iowa would still go, within the third or fourth week. And I think I clustered them geographically. So I think we had Vermont and New Hampshire going first. And the gist was that, maybe you'd lose some in those first couple, but you could still make up ground because the really big consequential ones were further down the road. You could have a slow start and still make a comeback. If you were a poor, underfunded candidate who didn't have the ability to run ads from coast to coast, you could try retail politicking in those small early states and see it. And look, would it be a perfect system? No, but I think it was one that was designed to make it at least competitive and at least wouldn't automatically be whoever starts with the most money and the biggest name recognition automatically wins. And it doesn't make the entire Republican primary focus on ethanol and how terrific it is and how we all should be drinking a big glass of ethanol every morning and how we're going to stop the terrible Quebecois syrup smuggling rings up in New Hampshire that are there. I like these two states, but they basically had to pick their nominee every 4 years. And I think we in Virginia and others in 48 other states are I think it's time we got a little bit more say in this. And at least this way, everybody would feel like no matter where they were in the calendar, they were still meaningful because of the sheer number of votes that were at stake.
Yeah, and the delegates. Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of campaigns are over by Super Tuesday, if not sooner. Even Bush-McCain, which was a pretty big slugfest, by Super Tuesday, that was pretty much the end of the road. Others more recently have gone longer, but historically, Bush 41 and Clinton, all those folks had pretty much wrapped it up by then. All right, 4Patriots. You can get fantastic deals at 4Patriots by going to 4patriots.com/martini. In fact, you can get a free solar panel with the purchase of the Patriot Power Generator 2000X. And the reason you want the generator is because you want to be prepared. You don't want to be surprised when the power goes out and then be at the mercy of how soon is the power company going to be able to get it back on in my neighborhood. You don't want to be in the dark and the cold for hours or days. You want to be able to plug stuff into your generator and get right back on your feet. The new solar generator has double the capacity. It's expandable, so you can run the big appliances. Comes with 12 outlets, including 4 AC, plus 2 USB-C outlets. Also, it never needs gas. It's fume-free, silent, and safe. Plus, you can save on other stuff at the website, including the plant-based protein survival food kit and the butter powder. Visit 4patriots.com/martini to get your Patriot Power Generator 2000X with free solar panel included. Plus, get free shipping on orders over $97. Save more and get peace of mind now by going to the number 4patriots.com/martini. That's 4patriots.com/martini. All right, Jim, on to our second martini. Kind of bad, kind of crazy, kind of good, depending on how you look at the outcome of the jungle primary out there in California. They don't do it by party. They put everybody into the same primary, and then the top 2 vote getters in the primary make it to the general election. And for a long time, it looked like it would be yet another Democrat versus Democrat general election, which is depressing if you're a Republican and really bad if you're a Republican running for a different office when only Democrats are running for offices higher than you on the ballot. At the same time, though, Democrat versus Democrat takes up a lot of resources, and you can perhaps have an advantage in some other states. But with Dianne Feinstein dying last year, we have an interim senator not running for that seat for 6 years. And so Adam Schiff got in. He's the Pelosi choice. Then there was also Katie Porter and Barbara Lee. And a late entry into the game was former baseball all-star Steve Garvey. Great ball player with the Dodgers and the Padres. Went to a bunch of World Series and actually won one with the Dodgers in 1981. Got slaughtered with the Padres against the Tigers in 1984. And unfortunately, that's probably going to be pretty reminiscent of how this is going to turn out in November. We don't like Adam Schiff. We don't think he should be in the Senate, but it's a heavily blue state. And in a head-to-head matchup, it's hard to imagine that he's not going to win that seat, Adam Schiff. But the good news here is, Jim, the Republicans actually got a guy into the finals. Even though he's pretty moderate on some stuff that a lot of conservatives might not like. But the best news of all is that if you don't like candidates who pour boiling potatoes on their estranged husband's head or want a $50 minimum wage in your state, with Barbara Lee and Katie Porter now headed to the showers and not even going to be in the House because they decided to run for Senate, that's good news.
We have such unreasonable expectations, Greg. How dare we? Look, this will help down ticket. The Senate races in California are never all that competitive, but there are competitive House races, in relative swing districts down there. And having a Republican candidate on the ticket helps. Not a lot. It's not going to be a game changer. These candidates will still have to run hard in, some pretty purple districts. Biden will almost certainly be winning California by a wide margin. Although, by the way, every time again, I'm not saying Trump's going to win California, but you do wonder, situation at the border, crazy leftiness, economic problems, exodus from the state. I would have preferred to see a Republican win the LA mayor's race, but came closer than usual. There's rumblings of discontent in California, and I wonder if that'll be worth a couple of percentage points there. And again, when you have two Democrats competing for the Senate race, last time that happened, you saw a lot of Democrats saying, Democrats only have 49 or whatever it was, seats, but they won, 58% of the votes or something like that. What it was is they were counting two Democratic candidates in the Senate race in California and 0 Republican. And if you probably, as listeners noticed, California's a big state, whole lot of voters. Right. So you end up with several million votes for the Democrats and 0 votes for the Republicans. And that's a good way for bad faith commentators to argue that Democrats are a lot more popular than they are. So, look, is this a huge deal? No, but it's a moral victory for Republicans just to make the ballot for the general election. I'm not a huge fan of jungle primaries. You do have, Louisiana has sort of a similar system. Most of the time, in particularly in other states, you get the most popular Republican, most popular Democrat win, and you end up with a general election that is kind of what you'd expect. California is different. California has become a one-party state. I don't think it's a crazy right-wing argument to say that California has become worse run since it has become a one-party state. Now, whether you want to count your Republicans as Schwarzenegger, who, again, not quite as conservative as we would have liked, or Pete Wilson, or any of the predecessors, but I think you can say, just the state government was more responsive because you could lose an election to the other party if you did a really lousy job. California Democrats, you can screw up terribly. And one of the great ironies, looking back to the Newsom recall, was that actually Larry Elder was sneaking up there until people paid attention and noticed. Until people realized, as long as it was just, Larry Elder, okay. So, disappointing. But, California's just proven itself to be one of those states where you need all the stars to align perfectly. But I kind of get the feeling that this is not a great cycle to be running as a Democrat. Yeah, Schiff's probably going to win. I don't know if Porter or Barbara Lee supporters will carry a grudge into the general election. All in all, for Garvey, you've already won something of a victory. And now you just go out there and shoot your shot, say what you stand for, and see how well you do.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting you bring up Schwarzenegger because I think that Garvey's kind of a Schwarzenegger-esque Republican. He's for certain pathways to citizenship.
Famous for something besides politics,
Yes, yeah.
As somebody said, the real problem is anybody who's not a Dodger fan.
Yes. Yeah, the Giant fans are probably not going to be turning out in droves for Steve Garvey. But, on climate and immigration and abortion, he's not where conservatives would want to be. And that's also where Arnold Schwarzenegger was. I think in a presidential year, the turnout's going to be such in California that it's virtually impossible for a Republican to win a statewide seat, particularly one like that. Maybe in a midterm year, it would have been a little bit different, or at least a little bit closer. But we'll see. I mean, Adam Schiff's got a lot of baggage. Garvey's got a little bit himself, but we'll find out in the end. But I think if you're a betting man, you got to put the money on Schiff, unfortunately. A guy who definitely doesn't deserve to be there, but once you make the finals against a Republican in California, it's probably going to happen.
I mean, just think about how Porter and Lee are saying, God, we lost to this guy.
Nancy Pelosi's very happy. She's getting a pint of ice cream out of that massive multi-$1,000 fridge in San Francisco. So one other quick note, in Texas, big primary night there as well. The school choice crowd, very, very happy with the Republican primaries. Remember, it didn't quite get through the Texas House, but last night there were a bunch of challengers who were pro-school choice. And Corey DeAngelis, one of the big school choice advocates around the country, saying 6 anti-choice incumbents from the Republican Party were ousted, 4 more forced into runoffs. So if all of those hold up and they could pick up a couple in the runoffs, they think they're going to be in good position to get school choice in Texas next year, assuming, of course, they win the general election. But apparently that's considered likely. All right, Jim, Super Tuesday obviously dominated the political headlines on, Tuesday. But when it comes to other political news, we got another bombshell late in the afternoon from Kyrsten Sinema, senator from Arizona. Now, once she left the Democratic Party and she had been censured in her own state for refusing to kill the legislative filibuster and some other moves that did not endear her to her own party, she became an independent and tried to navigate those waters for re-election, but it was obvious from recent polls that that wasn't going to happen. The far-left Ruben Gallego seems to be ahead. Republicans seem to be coalescing around Kari Lake, which I suspect they're going to regret come November, but we can talk about that a little bit more. But anyway, here's Kyrsten Sinema's curious explanation yesterday that she is not running for re-election.
The only political victories that matter these days are symbolic. Attacking your opponents on cable news or social media. Compromise is a dirty word. We've arrived at that crossroad, and we chose anger and division. I believe in my approach, but it's not what America wants right now. I love Arizona, and I am so proud of what we've delivered. Because I choose civility, understanding, listening, working together to get stuff done, I will leave the Senate at the end of this year.
I mean, she's looking at the money. She's looking at the polls. She knows it's a futile effort at this point, so we'll see how the rest of the race shapes out. So, Jim, I think it's a decision that makes sense, but compared to what we were saying about Kyrsten Sinema 6 years ago and the pink tutu and all that stuff, she surprised us largely in good ways. We still disagree with her on most issues, but the way she respected the institutions of the Senate, a very pleasant surprise.
I was going to say, you look at what a progressive activist she was before she was elected to office. There may be few lawmakers who are more pleasant surprises than Kyrsten Sinema in her time, primarily in the Senate. In the House, she was pretty blue, or pretty left-leaning. Almost akin to what we're seeing just in the last couple of weeks with John Fetterman. I mean, my priorities would be, in my order of preference, would be principled conservative Republican who can get stuff done. After that, a Democrat who is idiosyncratic or willing to question party orthodoxy, and Sinema's support for the filibuster was very consequential. And the editors of National Review pointed out that, like, whatever else you think of her, we won't have Sinema next time around, and we won't have Joe Manchin. Now, allegedly, they were taking the flack for other Democratic senators who didn't really want to get rid of the filibuster, who could recognize that these sorts of moves tend to blow up in Democrats' faces. Harry Reid, remind you about some of these filibusters on judicial nominations, that there were other Senate Democrats who agreed with them but didn't want to say so publicly. Well, they're not going to be able to oppose it in secret anymore in the near future when these two Democratic senators leave. And then after that, the bottom of the barrel is the progressive Democrat. And I think Ruben Gallego, even though he left the progressive caucus because he's centrist now, wink, wink, I think his job got a lot easier. That in a three-way race, Kari Lake had a better shot. In a one-on-one race, it's much more important to appeal to those centrists and independents who were, what was left of Kyrsten Sinema's base of support. And just yesterday, at a time when it became very clear that Kari Lake needed to broaden and unite the party and get as many votes as possible, just this morning, she reports Nimrata Haley, because, it's like, that's just such a red flag. That's just such a clear signal of, I'm going to play the Indian card against her. Will suspend her campaign today after more humiliating landslide loses, not losses, loses on Super Tuesday. And the way I put it is that Ruben Gallego just clinched the top seed in the bye week heading into the general election. It's not to say this is certain, but if Kari Lake, his job, you thinks, like, again, this is the woman who said, McCain voters, get the hell out. She does not want moderate Republican vote. Independents hear that, right? Conservative or Democrats who are not entirely, far left and might be uncomfortable and might be interested in voting Republicans, they hear that. At the exact time that Kari Lake needs to be expanding her appeal, she's shrinking her appeal. She's still chasing away people who ordinarily would be supporting her or might be open to supporting her. This is temper tantrum politics. This is stupid. God save the Republican Party from idiot candidates like this. And, does this mean she's guaranteed to lose? I suppose Biden might be weak enough. The situation at the border might be bad. Like, you can see it, but she's not helping her case, and she's making the job easier for Ruben Gallego. And again, if we get Senator Ruben Gallego, we're going to be really missing the good old days of Kyrsten Sinema.
Yeah, he'll be much worse than her. And you're right about the filibuster. We'll see if the people who didn't have the backbone to say so when their votes weren't required will actually stand up when it does matter if the Democrats hang on to the Senate. Because without a legislative filibuster, if the Democrats win the other two things, the White House and the House, buckle up, baby. That's not going to be a fun ride. So, Jim, kind of a dour note to end on, but a consequential day in American politics. We'll talk again tomorrow.
Hey, don't feel too bad, America. We still have the State of the Union to look forward to.
Oh boy, get the bingo cards ready. Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks so much for being with us today. Please subscribe to the 3 Martini Lunch if you don't already, and tell your friends about us as well. We'd love to have them listening. Thanks for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. They really do help us out a lot. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great Wednesday and join us again on Thursday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.